So, Artem Klyga ist Anwalt für Militärrecht und arbeitet derzeit für die Bewegung der Kriegsdienstverweigerung Russland. Die Bewegung unterstützt militärdienstpflichtige und mobilisierte Personen in Russland dabei, frei zu bleiben und nicht in den Krieg geschickt zu werden. Er ist zudem Osteuropa-Experte von Connection e.V. und war im März 2025 im Zuge einer Recherchereise des ZDF in Armenien und sprach dort mit russischen Deserteurinnen, die über Rekrutierung, Mobilisierung und den Umgang mit Verweigerern in dem Land berichtet haben. Armenien ist ja eines der wenigen Länder, wo Menschen aus Russland ohne Reisepass noch hinreisen können. Aber das wird Artyom jetzt auch gleich beschreiben. Artyom, 15 minutes, you have the word.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christina. Thank you very much for the invitation for this webinar. The topic is quite actual and topical today. I would like to describe briefly the situation in Russia for the 2025. So yeah, now we are living at the moment when we have 4 years of the war between Russia and Ukraine, and unfortunately, the situation for concession subjectors in Russia are becoming worse and worse. So 2025 was the year when Russian government started to implement new practices, especially for objectors. Firstly, it was marked with implementing the electronic register for conscripts. So now the conscription in Russia became finally digital. So there is nothing like briefs, papier, or a very old-fashioned system. They passed a law in 2023 and finally implemented electronic register in July 2025. So now, for example, military enlistment officers can notify all men between 17 and 65 years old electronically. And of course, it's becoming more difficult to live in this kind of situation. For example, you can't, um, there is, you can have a phone, you can have internet connection, but for example, you don't have access to the system of electronic system, but you are obliged to visit a military enlistment office if you receive a notification. So it's now an obligation of a person directly, and it's changed the system completely. The second thing is about the period of conscription. Firstly, in Russian history, since 2026, we have a conscription totally from January to December. So there is no more period of conscriptions like for fall or spring period with some pauses. No, now from 1st January of 2026, it was a new law in 2025. All events, all military enlistment officers are working through all year. And of course, it's also a new challenge for objectors because now it's impossible to legally await military office in, for example, in January, February, March, or in July and August. So now you are obliged to do everything that they say through the whole year. It was a little bit shocking for us because, as I said, it's a precedent. First time in history of Russia, we have a conscription period through whole year. What else? In 2025, we saw the new changes for people who are trying to evade from health conditions. So it's quite popular in Russia. If it's impossible for you to fight for alternative civil service, a lot of people are trying to evade through the health conditions. So they prove their medical situation to the military enlistment office that they are unfit for the Russian armies. They present a lot of medical documents. And in September 2025, Russian government started to change this system. They implemented new regulations and they changed old regulations. So they made situation worse for people who are trying to evade according to the medical conditions. So now some disease, some health conditions became okay for the Russian army. It's about conscripts. It's also about military men who are now in the front, who are now participating in this war. So it became much difficult to be demobilized, to be fired from Russian army for both group of people, for conscripts and for military personnel. So there were also new regulations for foreign people, and it's also important because Russian government are trying to recruit a lot of foreigners. So according to the new regulations in 2025, now it's impossible to receive a Russian passport or Russian residence permit without signing the military contract with the with the Ministry of Defense. So for all foreigners except as citizens of Republic of Belarus, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and Ukraine, you are now obliged to sign a military contract if you want to receive Russian residence permit. So it's now useless, I can say, to obtain Russian residence permit because you are obliged to participate in the war with Ukraine. So it was also new regulations for foreigners, and of course, Russian army are trying to find new men for the war. If you can see, there is nothing like mobilization process in Russia. Everyone is talking about that mobilization was over in 2022, but of course it's a lie. Vladimir Putin and Russian government are trying to find a lot of alternative ways to recruit new people to the front, and they're quite success in this practice. For example, in October 2025, a new law was passed about a reservist group of people, specific group of people we are naming them reservist, who can participate at the war between Russia and Ukraine, just on a specific positions. For example, to guard, for example, to defend specific objects like power plants or like military units. So not participating directly at the war, but to defend something. Of course, it was a lie, but it's a brilliant example how they try to find new people. They offer them possibilities that's not true, but they describe it like a possibility to be a defender of a power plant in Luhansk region and just to be there and receive some money. And a lot of people, unfortunately, some people, they believe to this propaganda and they sign a specific contract and they find themselves in the front line. It's only one example. In December 2025, they started to use group of students, group of young men between 18 and 25 years old, as a group that also could be recruited to the war between Russia and Ukraine. So they started to offer them a specific contract, a specific military contract to be drone operator, to be a weapon drone operator. So they offer them money, they offer them a guarantee that they can be very safe and very far from the war, like 250, 300 kilometers from the war line, and they can be only in a specific group of military, so like weapon drone operator. And they started to have this propaganda in all Russian universities. Now we're fighting with this. We're fighting with this propaganda. We're fighting with this attempt to find new men in Russian universities. Yeah, but it's also, as you understand, it's a lie. It's nothing written at the law about specific drawn group of military. So it's all about participating at the war. It's such another example how they recruit new people. And of course, we noticed that all old practices of oppressing people to the military contract stayed with us. So we still every day we're receiving requests and information about young people who are oppressed in the military units. I mean, this is a group of people who are obliged to serve in a Russian army for 1 year, so it's conscripts, and they are oppressed, forced in the military units to sign a military contract. And legally, when they sign it or when all documents are falsified, they receive military status, and that's why Russian government can send them to Ukraine. And when I am reading some BAMF decision in Germany, we also receive a lot of arguments that Vladimir Putin uses only professional army, Vladimir Putin uses only contract soldiers in the army. Legally, it's true, but topically, we can see that this is a result of this oppressing and of this practice to violently violently oppress people to sign these contracts. I mean, young people like who was born 25, 26, 27. In 2025, it was the first guy who died who was born in 2008. Officially, journalist found his name. So this practice continued and it became worse and worse. This practice was uh, implemented in August 2024 when the battle for Kursk region began. And then after the finishing of this battle, so this practice continued. And of course, there are another group of people who are recruited, like from jails, from detention centers. Anyone with a criminal records, anyone with a criminal charges against them are recruited to the Russian army. As I said, every day we're receiving requests about it. People can be charged with a criminal offense about drug possession or like another criminal case, and they are oppressed in detention center to sign a contract to the military army. Why? Because if you sign a contract under the situation when you have a criminal case against you, legally, the state close your criminal case after that. So you can commit something. There are a lot of cases when a person committed murder, for example, then he signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense and all questions off. So the state doesn't have any questions to that person. And of course, yeah, so there is nothing like criminal process or criminal procedure against them because this person are sent to the front. About the alternative civil service, I would like to say some points. Despite the fact that I described some negative tendencies, we noted that there are a lot of people who started to choose alternative civil service. Now we got official numbers that 2,722 people in 2025 were under the alternative civil service. It's a record in the history of Russia, absolute record. Despite that fact, in Moscow and in other regions, they are trying to put legal barriers and they trying to like do anything except except approval of the alternative civil person for a young man. So it became very difficult to receive a chance to have only alternative civil service, but there are a lot of people who are trying and doing this and are fighting for that right. So as I said, now 2,722 people have chosen alternative civil service only in 2025. And also about some military personnel, about people with the military status, we received official data that 11,500 criminal cases were initiated against them. So there are cases only for desertion and for unauthorized leave of military unit. So 11,500 cases in total in 2025, according to the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Russian Federation and the United Nations, there are more than 50,000 deserters from Russian army, and mostly they are hiding in Armenia and Kazakhstan. Some of them are lucky to reach European Union, but here they face a lot of another problems, especially with Dublin law and a lot of negative decisions, also like in Germany and in other countries. And some last points, I think, about 2025. I would like to say about militarization at schools. It's also a very, very topical thing. So a new lesson at Russian schools were implemented. So I don't want to translate it in English, but it's about defending the homeland. So mostly a lot of people with an experience who were at the war started to teach or started to participate in these lessons. So they, for example, they describe basics how to operate a weapon drone. So they describe basics about how to use a weapon like a rifle AK-47 or something like this. Of course, a lot of publications at schools and about this war that they call military, special military operation in a positive way. So now Russian schools, and in 2025, so each week children they got this lesson, and it's mostly about not how to defend your country, not how to defend your homeland, but about some positive marks, positive points about special military operation. And we are helping parents and we're helping people here to say no to this lesson, to refuse from that lesson. It's still possible, but with some difficulties. And yeah, we receiving a lot of requests from parents with a question how it's possible to legally wait from that lesson. And luckily, we still have an instruction and possibility to help them. But I think from 2026 or 2027, this lesson could become obligatory for all children at schools.
Artem, I'm sorry. Do you have much more?
No,
Because
it was last point about
okay,
militarization.
okay.
Yeah, and so we are continuing our work in Russia and especially in European Union, helping deserters and objectors. So yeah, even with these conditions, I think it was like my points. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christina, for translation. Yeah.